Jacksonville Jaguars might have to be the most strangest franchise that I've ever seen in my time following the NFL. And the reason I'm saying this is they did the hard part, and then out of nowhere they dismantled it all for one experiment going wrong, and none of it makes sense to me whatsoever. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here, and real quick before we get to the content, make sure you're following me on Twitch. A link to my Twitch is in the description down below. We're going to be doing a Madden 21 modded simulation starting from the 2003 NFL season in an attempt to shine a light on the Madden franchise mode. You guys are going to like it, man. Just come through, trust me. And on top of that, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on my notifications. A lot of my videos have been getting demonetized, so some of those videos and my content in general may not be shown to you guys unless if you have my notifications on. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? This is our second video of today already, and the first one had to do with Chase Young, but this one is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart because I've been following Leonard Fournette ever since he was coming out of high school, ever since he was a very highly touted recruit that went to LSU. And I've said this as a Cowboy fan many times. I remember in the 2017 NFL draft, a year after the Cowboys drafted Ezekiel Elliott, that we were in a position to take Leonard Fournette over Zeke because I thought in the long run he was going to be the better player. He just seemed more explosive. He had a running style similar to Adrian Peterson. He was more of a jack of all trades, although he wasn't really known for his ability to block like Ezekiel Elliott was. Nevertheless, the Jacksonville Jaguars seem to have had a recipe for success. They drafted Luke Joeckel 4 years ago, who was considered to be the best left tackle in the entire 2013 NFL draft, which, by the way, he turned out to be a notorious draft bust. And then after that, they drafted Blake Bortles with the number 3 overall pick in the 2014 NFL draft, who, by the way, when he was drafted, I said was the next coming of Blaine Gabbert. He was one of those players that you drafted because you thought he had tremendous potential, not because he already was very talented. And the Jacksonville Jaguars proved in the Blaine Gabbert era that they were not a team that was capable of further developing a raw quarterback like Blake Bortles, so that didn't work out either. In 2015, they had another top 5 draft pick that barely spent any time with him in Dante Fowler, the best overall edge rusher in the 2015 NFL draft that sustained an injury early in training camp, had to miss the entire year. And by the time he came back, the Jacksonville Jaguars decided to trade him to the Los Angeles Rams shortly after. And that trade made a lot of sense. Yannick Ngakoue turned to have a lot of potential. They also had Calais Campbell, Marcel Darius, Malik Jackson. It was just very, very packed over there, and having a number 3 overall pick that was eventually going to get a great payday, just rotating in and out, just didn't make a lot of sense. So I understood that. And then in 2016, they probably made their best draft pick of the past decade, drafting the shutdown corner with a huge mouth that brought energy to the team that was kind of their enforcer in Jalen Ramsey. And if you watch the way Ramsey carries himself, the guy literally is a guy that you want to build your defense around. He'll talk trash to other wide receivers, take the offense out of their game, and completely shut down one side of the field. But on top of this, unlike players like Darrelle Revis, Jalen Ramsey is a notoriously good tackler on top of it, which isn't something you typically see from cornerbacks because Deion Sanders, as well as he was in man coverage, he was horrific at tackling other players. Now that the Jacksonville Jaguars had a phenomenal defense, they only had one issue. Well, their offense was fairly pedestrian. In 2017, they had Blake Bortles under center, and, well, he wasn't really good at moving the ball downfield. He showed flashes, but for the most part, he wasn't that remarkable at the quarterback position. So what do? Well, you draft Leonard Fournette, the best running back prospect in the 2017 NFL draft at the time. Of course, it ended up being Christian McCaffrey being the best player in that draft class and maybe Dalvin Cook in the second round. But in terms of running backs at the time, it seemed really promising to take Leonard Fournette at number 4. And the formula for success here was very simple, guys. You just run the ball a bunch with Leonard Fournette, control the clock, and put a lot of pressure on the opposing team's offense to drive it down on the Jacksonville Jaguars and try to score on the likes of Jalen Ramsey, AJ Boye, Malik Jackson, Marcel Darius, Calais Campbell, and Yannick Ngakoue. Not to mention that we had Miles Jack and Telvin Smith at the middle linebacker position. That team was absolutely loaded, and they made it all the way to the 2017 AFC Championship, of course eventually losing to Tom Brady. And that's where everything fell apart. In 2018, they didn't really perform as well as they did in 2017. And that's when the Jacksonville Jaguars began dismantling their team. They traded their rotational pass rusher Dante Fowler to the Los Angeles Rams for a 3rd round and a 5th round pick. They would also cut Blake Bortles and bring in Nick Foles on a 4-year, $88 million contract. That move failed as well. And when the Nick Foles move completely blew up in their face in the sense that he didn't really even get a chance, he literally sustained an injury in week 1, and then the Jaguars punted on the Nick Foles experiment altogether. Although, of course, I want to give the props that Gardner Minshew deserves. He was a fairly good, decent quarterback given the circumstances. It seems like the Jacksonville Jaguars just completely gave up on their entire team, trading their shutdown corner Jalen Ramsey after he demanded a trade given how things were going over to the Los Angeles Rams for multiple 1st-round picks, might I add. So that may have not been the worst move because this is right before you need to pay the best cornerback in the game. But they took this approach that I didn't agree. It was this when it rains, it pours approach where they completely dismantled their amazing defense for absolutely no reason whatsoever. AJ Boye got traded. Calais Campbell got traded for a late round draft pick. Yannick Ngakoue just got traded yesterday, and literally 3 years after making it to the 2017 AFC Championship, after they successfully rebuilt their team, the Jaguars once again are in a position where they're looking like they're going to get a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And it seems like this is how it's been for them. They always get a top 5 pick. And usually the issue is the team drafts a horrible player with the top 5 pick, but that's not even the case for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They aren't even picking so terribly. Yeah, they've had some whiffs, but they actually have had some hits, but what they do with the hits is very head-scratching. For example, this Leonard Fournette situation, when they decided to cut him, the reason they decided to cut him is because they couldn't find anyone that wanted to trade for him. And the reason they couldn't find anyone that wanted to trade for him is because they absolutely decimated his stock as a player. They ruined it. They talked so poorly about him and had all these issues behind the scenes where they literally told him that they were planning on moving on from him and they declined his team option and stuff like that. And once you do that, that's okay. But once you do that, at least re-sign the player. You know, like his stock is all the way the lowest it's been. That's good business. You completely ruined his stock. You could probably bring him back on a very cheap contract as a result of how poorly he's played. And he probably would have agreed to those terms because the market for running backs isn't anything that's so special. It's nothing that's that inflated, especially given what happened to Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley. But in this case, at least bring back Leonard Fournette. It's not like he's that horrible. Like if he was Trent Richardson, I would understand, but at least the Cleveland Browns were able to get something in return for Trent Richardson. They didn't just outright cut him after he had a 1,000-yard rushing season. Leonard Fournette had 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons out of his 3 seasons in the NFL, and his last season he averaged 4.3 yards per carry. He also was able to tack on 500 yards receiving. That's not that horrible. Yeah, it's not that remarkable. He's not McCaffrey. He's not Ezekiel Elliott. He's not even in that tier. But it's not so bad that you need to decide, hey, we want to cut him and not get anything for him. It's better to at least store him in your roster, especially in a year that he's probably going to be trying to play for a better contract. Now that he hits the open market, where do I think he's going to go? And where do you guys think he's going to go? Let me know in the comment section because I'm going to give you some of my top teams. First of all, the New England Patriots will obviously always take a chance on some talent that has hit the market, especially high draft picks. We saw this happen with Cam Newton recently, but the thing is, I don't think the Patriots are in desperate need of running back help. They're making it work with Sony Michel and James White, so I don't really see a huge need for the New England Patriots to go after him. Of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would absolutely love him. They currently have LaShawn McCoy and Ronald Jones as their running backs, but historically, I don't recall any Bruce Arians-led teams really being big on running backs. They don't emphasize the running back enough for Leonard Fournette to at least entertain him. Yeah, he might be enamored by the fact that it's the Buccaneers and Tom Brady's there and there's a whole culture shift going on there. But in terms of trying to do what's best for his career, the teams that I would look at are the Miami Dolphins, who currently have Matt Breida and Jordan Howard, but I think Matt Breida and Leonard Fournette would make a nice little combination in the backfield. I do see Brian Flores using his running backs a lot this year, but they don't really have the greatest offensive line, so it could be a little bit tough for Leonard Fournette to produce. But I think the best team that could potentially sign Leonard Fournette is the Los Angeles Rams, because Todd Gurley is gone and they desperately need a replacement for him. Cam Akers might be the answer there, but he probably is not the answer there, or it's too soon to tell if he's the answer there. Why not hedge your bet and bring in Leonard Fournette on a fairly cheap deal? This completely solves your Gurley problem. You put Leonard Fournette in that offense where Gurley was able to dominate, and you put him in that exact role, and I feel like Leonard Fournette will be able to produce. Bear in mind, Sean McVay is really, really good at scheming for his running backs. His entire offense, at least 60% of it, relies on fake jet motion sweeps. So that should open things up for Leonard Fournette. Of course, the offensive line is fairly suspect over there, but I'm looking for the Los Angeles Rams to give Leonard Fournette's agent some calls, and I think that's the best place for him to land. Other teams are, of course, the Washington football team. They just lost Darius Geis, and they have Adrian Peterson there. So if he wants to play underneath a veteran who is without a doubt a Hall of Famer, that's another option. But let me know in the comment section down below. If you were Leonard Fournette, where would you want to go? And let me know what you think the Jacksonville Jaguars are doing. I think they're probably tanking for Trevor at this point. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.